Hello, Shiver Seekers. Are you ready to follow us into the unknown? I'm Cynthia.
And I'm Stephanie. You have found the Dark Oak.
Today, I tell you all about the incredibly brutal Lake Oconee murders.
Ooh, this is the one that you told me was going to be rough, right?
It's pretty brutal. Brutal is like the best word to describe this one I can think of.
Trigger warning all around, folks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Welcome to the Dark Oak, the mystery podcast with purpose. Each month through our charity, the Branch of Hope Foundation, which makes up for all this brutal information we're about to share with you, we give a portion of earnings from our Patreon and sponsors to a nonprofit organization related to the first episode of the month. To find out more information, head to our Instagram at the Dark Oak Podcast, our website, thedarkoak.com, or stay to the end of the episode and we'll give you all the details.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. And Stephanie,
it's 100 episode celebration.
We are celebrating. We are about to have our 100th episode.
Yep. Our full-on celebration, our 2-month celebration of our 100th episode. So I'm sure by now everyone is well aware, but in the month of April and May, that's a full 9 weeks, we're going to release 2 episodes every week.
You're welcome.
Ooh, you are welcome. And also, we have a giveaway because we want to thank you for getting us to this point, 100 episodes. So all we would like you to do is head to our Instagram account, which you've probably already done. Hit that follow button. Leave a comment on any Instagram post that you would like. Then find wherever you are listening to this podcast, give us a 5-star review, and then send us a message. Let us know you did that. You can email us. You can send us a message on Instagram. You can leave us a message on Spotify, whatever works for you. And we will enter you on that drawing. It's going to go live on April 25th on our Facebook page. We've got some delicious prizes. We have an adorable candle. We have some Dark Oak themed merch. You can find pictures of all that on our social media accounts. And we can't wait to touch base with you and to celebrate you.
That's right. And thanks for hanging around for 100 episodes, regular episodes. Doesn't include our Patreon episodes.
That's right.
It's 100 regular episodes.
Yeah.
So thanks for hanging around. And we look forward to bringing you 100 more.
I know. And guys, we've covered all the bases on these extra episodes, these bonus episodes. We're going to cover true crime. We're going to cover some missing persons, some unsolved homicides, some serial killers, some incredible survival stories, and just some plain weirdo mysteries. So you got to be here all spring. It's all things Dark Oak.
That's right. Well, I want to start off this episode by giving a shout out to a podcast that I used as my primary source for this episode, which was not my plan, but I started listening to the Deviant podcast, who did a 5-parter on this case.
Oh, okay.
It was so informative that I was just like, well, here's my source. Here's like my one-stop shop for sources.
Okay, interesting.
I just really, really enjoyed their program. And I don't normally do the podcast where they do like a lot of interviews and 911 calls and things like that. That's not normally what I gravitate towards. But that's exactly what they did here in Deviant. And I loved it.
Okay.
I loved it.
All right.
So you've got to check them out.
Way to go, guys.
Listeners, this is your warning that this one is pretty tough. Especially when you find out that Russell was 88 years old and Shirley was 87.
Oh, I hate these.
I told you it was going to be brutal.
I hate these.
Brutal.
Like, you make it into your 80s, and then that's how you go.
Late 80s. He's 88 years old.
I hate this.
Well, in his younger years, Russell had served in the Navy in World War II. And when he left the Navy, he started working as a local clock manufacturer in New Jersey. Russell believed in a good day's work. So it didn't take him long to work his way all the way up to executive at the clock factory.
Shirley was a wonderful stay-at-home mom to their 4 children. But even though Shirley stayed home with the kids, Russell was still a very hands-on dad. He was often the one taking the kids to sports and to scouting. And I love that. Sometimes in older generations, it feels like, the dad goes out and makes the money and the mom does all the cooking and the cleaning and the child rearing. So I love to know that he was really hands-on with the kids.
Yeah, I think having kids in like the 40s and 50s, I think you've pretty much followed traditional family roles. That's really cool.
Yeah. The Deviant podcast interviewed one of Russell and Shirley's sons, Brad, who said he doesn't even remember his parents ever fighting, which I just thought was such a testament to the kind of example they set for their kids.
Eventually, the Dermond family decided to head for warmer weather than they were able to find in New Jersey. So they decided to settle in Georgia. And with this move, Russell retired from the world of clockmaking. But as I told you, he was a hard worker. So he went straight back to work, and this time investing in Hardee's restaurants. And Hardee's restaurants always take me back to my childhood because my grandparents loved their breakfast. It's like I remember so many times just going there and like meeting my grandparents for breakfast. They must have had good coffee or something.
I don't know. I remember my dad living their breakfast too, and I never found anything on their menu that I liked, like breakfast food. But I remember my dad, anytime he had us kids, he was like, "Let's head over to Hardee's."
Yeah.
So they must have had some, I don't know if it was the pancakes or the coffee, but there was something.
I think they might be known for their biscuits and gravy.
Oh, my dad was a big biscuit and gravy man. So.
But the coffee sticks out to me. I still have I have my grandparents' cups, the coffee cups.
From Hardee's?
I do.
Oh, that's adorable.
So that's what sticks out. But I think they must have good biscuits and gravy.
Okay.
Russell ended up purchasing several Hardee's locations around Atlanta.
Get it.
Yeah. And some of his children ran the stores before Russell retired completely in 1994.
What a stand-up guy.
By this time, Russell and Shirley were living in a luxury home in a town called Eatonville, Georgia, located in Putnam County. And here's a little trivia for you. Eatonville is the birthplace of Truett Cathy. Do you recognize that name?
Was that home to the Chick-fil-A sandwich?
It is. Truett Cathy is the founder of Chick-fil-A.
There you go.
There you go.
And this is a gorgeous little town. In fact, it's been described as one of the most exclusive communities in Georgia, if not the entire country.
Oh, boy.
And a major part of the town's charm comes from the fact that it sits right on beautiful Lake Oconee. Now, Eatonville has a lot of good golf. In fact, it's described as some of the best in the country, whatever that means, because windmill always gets in my way.
Pa-bow-ching!
Eatonville is a resort town, and at any given time, there are more people visiting from out of town than there are locals that live there year-round. So the area has a lot of high-end vacation homes and such. Looking at photos of Lake Oconee, it's insanely gorgeous. It just looks like paradise. I want to live there. And I'm not the only one. A lot of wealthy retirees live in the area. Some celebrities have vacation homes on Lake Oconee. It's just a really nice place with very little crime.
Sounds like a great place for a girls' getaway.
Let's go, please.
I mean, we are about to host a celebration. Just saying.
I'm in. Let me know and I'll pack my bags. Putnam County Sheriff Sills was interviewed and said this was the kind of place where police would get an alarm call from time to time, but it was always a false alarm. Just like its surroundings, the Dermond home was gorgeous. It was at the end of a cul-de-sac on Carolyn Drive. And in more recent years, Carolyn Drive has had more houses built on it. But at the time of our story, the Dermond house was a lot more isolated, even nestled into the woods on the end of this cul-de-sac.
I mean, it sounds like a literal dream.
Oh, I love it. Like, I feel like, they kind of ruined it by building more houses.
Right.
It was gorgeous. And every house in the neighborhood had their own private dock. But the Dermonds were looking at their plans for the future. They were planners, as you can probably see here.
Oh, yeah.
They'd recently begun looking into high-end retirement homes. I guess the plan was eventually that was the type of place they would end up. So over the course of several months, the couple had begun downsizing things they weren't currently using, including their boat. Now, Lake Oconee is huge. It's more than 20,000 acres, and it spreads out over 4 counties in Georgia. It's huge.
Big.
And given the size of this lake, there's lots of places for people to access the water. So obviously you've got your private docks for the people who live directly on the waterfront, but then there's also neighborhood and community docks, and then 7 public boat ramps for public access.
Wow. Okay.
At the time of our story, Russell and Shirley had been married for 68 years. Russell was a golfer, while Shirley loved to play bridge at the Bridge Club. The two went to Oconee Community Church, where they were involved with the church community, and they really enjoyed spending time with their adult children and their 9 grandchildren.
On Sunday, May 4th, 2014, the couple failed to show up for the party they'd been invited to. It was the weekend of the Kentucky Derby, and one of the residents inside the neighborhood was hosting a Kentucky Derby party, and the Dermonds had told the host they would be attending, but they never showed up. This was unusual. The Dermonds generally kept their word, but it was just a party, so missing it wasn't an immediate cause for concern.
And they're older. Maybe there was a cold. I mean, there could be a lot of things.
Right.
Not that young people can't get colds, but you guys know what I'm saying.
Sure. I knew exactly what you were saying.
That's
So nobody was really concerned at first, but when the Dermonds didn't answer or return any phone calls for the next couple of days, their friends, Mr. and Mrs. Wynn, another elderly couple who lived in the neighborhood, decided to stop by the Dermond house on Tuesday, May 6th. It was around 10 a.m. that morning when Peggy Wynn called 911. She told the dispatcher that she and her husband had stopped by to check on their friends, and they believed one of them to be inside dead.
Oh, no.
Putnam County Sheriff Sills was the second car on scene. When law enforcement arrived, the Wynns were waiting for them outside. Mr. Wynn led authorities to the Dermond garage. Standing in the doorway to the garage from inside the kitchen, you couldn't really see anything concerning. But once authorities walked down a couple of stairs leading into the garage itself, and they looked between 2 parked cars, they knew why Mr. Wynn was in such a state of shock. Laying on his back near the garage door was 88-year-old Russell Dermond. He had been beheaded. Laying around him were towels.
Oh, no.
Brutal. Laying around him were towels, presumably placed there to absorb the blood and fluids in an effort to keep them from leaking out of the garage door and possibly alerting anybody who happened to be walking by, because he was laying like right in front of the garage door.
That is so evil.
It's evil. This case is evil.
That is evil.
Now, when I hear someone's been beheaded, obviously I imagine a lot of blood, and there was quite a bit, but there wasn't as much as you might think. And this led authorities to believe that mercifully Russell had been decapitated after his death.
Okay.
And this was pretty clear to the authorities just from looking around, because, had it happened while he was alive, I'll spare you the details,
but then why?
There would have been evidence.
But then why?
Oh, girl. Well, okay.
Why?
We'll talk about potential whys, but I don't know that we have a great one. We have theories.
No, his head was there, right?
No.
Oh, his head was
beheaded.
gone.
We have never found his head. His head has never been found.
Literally, his head was just gone, just missing.
Gone. Missing.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Initially, the medical examiner believed Russell's cause of death was decapitation, but they were able to rule that out after further examination, because had that happened while he was still alive, an artery is going to leave a lot more evidence than was found at the scene.
I honestly don't know that we have covered in 100 cases. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to say 100 episodes, like 100 more times, because I'm just really excited about it. But also, in 100 episodes, I don't know that we've covered a beheading.
We've never. Because there is something about the idea of beheading.
No, it's really, I'm like squirming in my chair right now.
It's barbaric. Like even like back, at the Tower of London and things like that. I'm just like, what? This is the most barbaric thing. I cannot believe that humans did this. And so.
But even that, okay, decapitation as a way of murder or punishment or whatever you want to like call it, or whoever is doing it. That's one thing. Because it is a quick death.
They say it's actually a merciful death.
It's a merciful death. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, if they had thought, whoever this is that did that to him, if that was the way he died, okay, maybe they were sparing him. But the fact that you would go and decapitate him after you had already killed him, to me, almost makes it more crazy.
Well, and here's the thing. It's a quick death. Well, we're getting brutal now. It's a quick death if you do it like via sword or guillotine or something like that. That's not how this was performed.
That's what, see, I'm picturing like a samurai sword, like a just quick, you know.
No, this was a little more
a little hacksaw-ish.
crude.
Okay.
I mean, it was a clean cut, and it did actually follow the outline of his t-shirt. Like, it's almost like they used that for a guide, but it wasn't like a
okay, it wasn't like a sword
No.
or an axe. I don't know why I'm thinking axe. Isn't that what they use in the cartoons? Why is there beheading in so many cartoons? Anyway, we're moving on. I digress. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. You've just got me all squeamish with the beheading thing. I'm like, really?
The beheading is rough.
Do you see like my body language right now?
She is having a real reaction to this.
I am like breathing heavy. I'm squirmy.
I may have triggered her. And, sometimes Stephanie and I will like talk beforehand and be like, okay, this one's a little rough. Like, I want you to be prepared. I did not prepare her for this.
No,
so.
I am not prepared. And I'm going through it right now. Just so if you're going through it, I'm also, we're going through it together. We're going through this together right now because apparently beheading is a trigger for me.
And I get it.
I am gesturing like maniacally. I am using my hands. I'm trying not to hit my mic.
The vibe in this room has changed, folks. It really has. The energy has shifted. I personally take some solace in the idea that he wasn't killed that way. Here's what they think his cause of death was. Gunshot residue was found on Russell's shirt. So investigators believe his cause of death was probably a gunshot wound to the head. But again, since his head has never been found, we can't be positive. So I don't know if that's any better, but that's where we are.
I'm legit having a moment.
She is. I'm gonna relieve you and keep going.
Okay, please do. Just keep reading. Okay. I'm just gonna ignore all my gesticulations over here.
The decomp fluid and blood that was at the scene had dried, and the towels used to build the dam were from the bathroom adjacent to the kitchen. So they came from the house. Russell's body was found on Tuesday, and investigators believe the attack happened on Saturday based on the information they were able to piece together. And they also believe the attack probably happened in the evening because the bed was unmade and Russell was wearing night clothes.
Okay.
The crossword puzzle in Saturday's newspaper was completed by Shirley and laying on the kitchen table. Now, this paper was actually delivered Friday night, but it was Shirley's custom to complete the crossword in the morning. So based on all of this information, they're thinking it probably happened Saturday night.
Right.
Speaking of Shirley, investigators searched the house and the entire surrounding area. There was no sign of her.
Her head or her body.
No sign of her at all. So Mr. Dermond has been murdered and Mrs. Dermond is missing.
Yikes.
Now, in a situation like this, law enforcement has to look at all potential possibilities. So they had to ask themselves, could Shirley have been involved with her husband's demise?
Oh, so she could have been?
I mean, you have to look at it.
The beheader?
Well, could she have been?
I don't know.
They were able to rule out pretty quickly. Given the fact that she was an 87-year-old woman, she probably wasn't capable of committing this violent of a crime. Because, again, not to get into the details, but dismembering a body is not an easy thing to do.
Well, it's not supposed to come apart.
Right.
So, yeah, it takes a good deal of force.
Physical strength. So an 87-year-old woman, it didn't seem like the most likely scenario.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then when authorities learned more about how long the couple had been married and how well they got along, it just became really clear. Shirley obviously didn't have anything to do with killing her husband.
Yeah, I'd be more worried about Shirley possibly being taken for like ransom.
Well, exactly. If Shirley didn't kill her husband, then it means she's missing. And that's horrific. Horrific.
Oh, no. And you have a pretty good idea that she's been missing for a few days now, too.
Exactly. Exactly. And we know they wouldn't have taken her for any good reason. We know what they're capable of. I can't even imagine being in the shoes of their children.
The house was processed, and it appeared that nothing in the house was disturbed. Nothing appeared to have been taken. There was no evidence of a struggle. Honestly, there was very little evidence at all. In fact, authorities couldn't say for sure that Russell was even killed at the home because there was such a lack of evidence, meaning there was no obvious location in the home where he'd been killed.
Like somebody could have just dumped him in the garage and drove off. Yeah.
Right. But there wasn't like blood evidence anywhere. Like they couldn't really figure out where any of this happened.
They didn't find a samurai sword.
Nope. The exterior door of the Dermond house was closed, but not locked. That's how the winds were able to go inside. And there was an alarm system for the home, but the alarm wasn't set. Russell was found wearing a t-shirt, boxer shorts, and a bathrobe. So, again, his night clothes.
Right.
However, his family said it would not have been unusual for him to lounge around on a lazy day in his sleepwear for several hours after waking up. So it didn't completely nail down the time. Unlike Shirley, who wouldn't even come downstairs until she was fully dressed.
Okay.
The home was processed, and Sheriff Sills said that they used enough fingerprint dust in the house to fill a pickup truck. Authorities would end up keeping the scene for 2 months before finally releasing it.
Man, and bless their hearts. It's clear that they were just trying everything. Like they didn't want to let the scene go because they wanted to try to find an answer.
We're going to talk more about him later, but I can tell you Sheriff Sills, this is the case. This is the case. He will go the rest of his life trying to solve this case.
I mean, it sounds like it. It sounds like they were doing their due diligence. They didn't just do a casual search of the house. They really did everything they could and then finally just had to admit there's just nothing here.
The neighborhood was processed. Being an upscale community, it was no surprise that the guard shack did have surveillance cameras catching everyone who came into or left the community by vehicle.
Okay, well, that sounds promising.
Well, yes, until you learn that unfortunately, a pretty bad storm had come through a couple of weeks prior to the murder and knocked the cameras out.
Of course it had. How many of these stories do we hear?
Well, and part of me wonders, like, is it the chicken or the egg? Are the cases unsolved because things like the surveillance camera isn't working? Because it does. It feels like every case we cover, which is unsolved cases.
Yeah, 100 of them.
Right.
No. Sorry, guys. I will stop. I promise. But also, yeah, I mean, what the heck?
But I wonder if that's why, like, because we don't have working surveillance footage.
Oh, it's just so frustrating.
The monitors were still working, so the security guards could see what was happening in real time, but nothing was being recorded. However, Sheriff Sills' opinion is that even in the event the cameras had been working, it probably wouldn't have helped much.
Well, you don't know who's legit, who isn't, and it was from several days ago. Yeah, I mean, I would have found it unlikely unless somebody literally points out and is like, "That's a bad guy."
Well, and there was construction. The neighborhood was still being built up, and
Yeah.
and yard maintenance, and these people were just waved in. So
Yeah.
it might give us a better idea of who came and went, again, via vehicle.
Well, I was going to say they could have also come by
Okay.
boat too, right?
So Sheriff Sills, along with many other law enforcement officers, believe the killer or killers came to the Dermond house by boat.
And if that's the case, does that mean they were specifically targeted then? Or do you just roll up on anybody's dock?
Well, I think we'll talk a little more about that. I don't know that we can say for sure they were targeted. Probably law enforcement would say, no, this was targeted.
Well, because
But
again,
I-
you just roll up on any dock and just stroll around. It's crazy. But again, we just still don't even know the motive for the crime at this point because nothing was taken. It wasn't robbery.
A lot of unanswered questions.
And to this point, that doesn't look like it's a kidnapping for ransom.
Well, because Sheriff Sills believed the killers probably came to the house via boat, they looked at the residents who had cameras at their docks on the water. But where do you point a camera? You point it at your own dock.
Right.
So
right.
it wasn't really helpful.
Right. Yeah.
Here's what we do know. On May 1st, 2014, Russell was seen on surveillance footage inside a Publix grocery store in Greensboro, Georgia. He was wearing a t-shirt, cargo shorts, and sandals, and he purchased 2 cucumbers and a loaf of bread using a credit card.
That's so adorable. Why is that so adorable, Cynthia?
I don't know, because it's literally all they're going to need. That's, I think, what makes it cute is this is what we need. It's simple.
They're so cute.
According to the children, Russell never carried cash. They didn't use a debit card, but they liked to use credit cards because they got that cash back. They could earn the points.
They're so cute.
Well, it's probably why they were so successful, is because they were smart.
Savvy. Yeah.
While he was out running errands, Russell also got some prescriptions filled. On the following day, Friday, May 2nd, a neighbor saw Russell taking a walk around the neighborhood, which was something he was known to do. And honestly, that's the last eyewitness account we have of Russell.
So the day before.
The day before, we believe that he was killed. Pastor David Key, the Dermond's pastor at Lake Oconee Community Church, said they were really down to earth. They had a simple life. They were very giving to their community. And I think that's kind of when we see them buying 2 cucumbers and a loaf of bread, just like a simple life.
Yeah.
In the Deviant podcast, a major character that we hear from is Putnam County Sheriff Sills, who at the time of his interview for the podcast had been in law enforcement for more than 50 years.
Oh, lots of experience.
A lot of experience, and most of that time was spent working as a detective. And then he's been the sheriff for 29 years. He's a 7th-generation Putnam County native, and I will tell you right now, I was very impressed with Sheriff Sills. He's got this thick Southern accent, just drips like honey.
Oh, man.
I loved it. But he's super smart, and you can tell he really cares. He graduated from the National Sheriff's Institute at the FBI Academy. He has a ton of accolades. This is a guy you want fighting for you.
Okay.
And this case keeps him up at night.
I was going to say, this is just the case for a guy like that.
Immediately upon finding Russell's body, Sheriff Sills put out a huge search for Shirley. And obviously, at this point, we have reason to believe she's in real danger. And at the same time, there were details that seemed unusual for an abduction. So, for instance, there was no note left behind. There was no ransom request. So those she's missing, and it appears she may have been abducted. There's also some problems with that theory.
Right. I mean, I would have thought they would have taken her as a hostage, possibly.
Right.
But again, days had passed and no one even knew she was gone. So that seems unlikely. But also, where the heck is she?
Well, hundreds of deputies from outside surrounding counties were brought in to help find her. The FBI was brought in. The Georgia State Department of Natural Resources joined the search. They were looking for anything that might help them locate Shirley. Now, on a lake that stretches over 4 counties, this is like looking for a needle in a haystack.
I feel like it would almost be hopeless.
It would feel very, very hopeless. It really would feel that way. But they were going to do anything they could. So to help with the search, investigators brought in special high-tech sonar that was so developed you could see a soda can at a 50-foot depth, which is pretty powerful.
Oh, wow. That actually is pretty impressive.
Now, while the search for Shirley was successful, the quest to find her alive was not.
Oh, shoot.
10 days after Russell's body was found, another 911 call was made, this time from 2 fishermen on Lake Oconee. They found what they believed to be a body just under the surface of the water, caught on some underwater trees. Sheriff Sills met them at the scene and did recover the remains of Shirley Dermond.
She had a mesh bag tied to her legs with 2 cement cap locks in it.
Evil.
Her
Just
body
evil.
was never meant to be found.
Evil.
She was completely clothed with shoes. She appeared to have head trauma. Fortunately, an autopsy would show she did not drown. She had been dead when she was put in the water, and her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head.
Oh, this is awful.
Shirley was found about 6 miles or 10 to 15-minute boat ride from the Dermond residence. Now, Lake Oconee does have a tide, But experts determined the tide would not have been strong enough to carry her to the spot she was found in since she had been weighted down. So she had been deliberately placed very near the spot where she was found. Sheriff Sills doesn't believe that Shirley was killed at the Dermond house because, again, there was no evidence.
What happened to these folks?
Well, here's the thing. Nobody really knew what to make of this. Nobody knew.
Are they going to drag her around on a boat and hit her in the head? Like, this is so weird.
It's awful. You've got this sweet elderly couple brutally murdered, and then their bodies left in such a terrible way.
It just seems like someone has a lot of malice, like somebody has a lot of anger. Was this mistaken identity? Did they think they were killing someone else? I don't know. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's not adding up.
It doesn't make sense. And I will tell you that never changes.
Okay.
That never changes. Now, obviously, residents were in shock, but they were terrified too. A real life monster or monsters has been in their sleepy little town. So to calm their fears, authorities did one large meeting with residents to let them know it didn't appear to be somebody who's going to continue to be a threat to the neighborhood.
To me, indicates a targeting, right?
I think the nature of the crime made authorities believe it was a targeting. Like it was a target, but
like they were the intended victims. Like it wasn't
right,
random.
Right. But this case is just full of question marks. I don't know that we really know anything for sure. So what could have happened? We have a couple in their late 80s with no enemies, no real motive for someone to have wanted them dead. At the same time, there's no evidence of a robbery gone wrong. We do know the killer or killers had access and knowledge of Lake Oconee, and they were able to navigate the area at night. They also had to have had access to a boat, because we now know that a boat was used to leave Shirley's body where it was left. And remember, the Dermond home was held as a crime scene for all those months?
Yep.
Well, during that time, authorities made many trips to the home. But even the authorities who breathed and ate and slept this case would get turned around when they were approaching the house by boat.
Oh.
So this definitely tells us something about the killers. They were familiar with the home and how to approach it from the water.
Did they have a wayward kid?
Well, that's interesting. Maybe yes and no. We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Maybe somebody hot to try to get an inheritance of some kind, maybe?
Oh, okay, so regardless of whether any children were wayward or not, the idea of an inheritance did come up. They were successful people, but they were also 88 and 87 years old.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You couldn't just wait it out a few more years?
Well, that's kind of the thing. You're gonna go murder your 88 and 87-year-old parents or grandparents or whoever.
Right.
And risk everything that comes with that, as opposed to,
right,
again, just waiting.
It doesn't seem to make sense, but again, this case doesn't make sense.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know that anything is going to answer all of our questions. This is just one of those that it doesn't. The manner of the murders has led some people to believe this could have been a hit because of the violence, like someone who wasn't bothered by the brutality of the killings.
Well, and that's what I was thinking, and I don't know that anyone would have put a hit on them, but could it have been they put out a hit, but who are these assassins or hitmen or whatever, just got the wrong house, got the wrong people?
I mean, that has happened before. We've heard of cases where that's happened.
Sure.
Sheriff Sills believes if this had been a professional killer, they should have known Shirley's body was not going to stay concealed because of the way it was left. This person had attempted to conceal it, but they should have known it wasn't going to stay that way.
What I don't understand is why take her body at all?
Okay, girl, you'll never know the answer to that.
Like, why take her body at all?
Right.
And why take his head? That is so weird. Do they have a house of heads? But she had her head, right?
Right.
So it wasn't like whoever the killer or killers are take a head from everyone they kill.
Right, like a trophy.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing that doesn't make sense. You have him left to be found. Right. No question he's been murdered.
Yeah.
So why do you take her?
Why would you take her? Unless there was an assault, a sexual assault of some kind, but it doesn't sound like that's likely.
No, that didn't appear she'd been sexually assaulted.
It's just strange. Were they trying to get information out of her?
Maybe.
Like a bank account
Maybe.
number or numbers to a safe or
Mm.
something like that?
Most of what you've mentioned are like kind of potential theories that maybe people have floated around. Like maybe they were using her as
And they-
threatening her to try to get information from him.
And they took Russell's head to intimidate her.
Who knows? Any of these are possibilities. But again, Sheriff Sills says if this had been a professional hit, they would have just come in, committed the murder, and gotten out. It's like that's not part of the MO, is to like
No, that's fair.
do all this extra unnecessary stuff.
No, it's definitely extra.
But let's explore it for the sake of exploring it. What would the motive have been had this been a professional hit? The best motive anyone could think of was maybe it was related to some old business dealing from many years prior, but this would have been years, if not decades before. You probably wouldn't wait all these years to exact your revenge.
Yeah, that's a grudge you've been hanging on
That's
to way too long.
A grudge. But if there was someone that had this big of a grudge against you, wouldn't the people close to you know it? No one could
Yeah.
think of anybody who didn't like this couple. Now, you mentioned a wayward child. 14 years prior to Russell and Cheryl's murder, they lost their son, Mark, to homicide. Now, unfortunately, Mark had struggled with drug and alcohol addiction for his entire adult life. And on August 30th, 2000, on his 47th birthday, he was killed in a drug deal.
Oh, that's tragic.
His killer, Troy Major, was only 25 years old at the time and was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Is it possible that someone was getting revenge for Mark's imprisonment? Again, this seems unlikely because of the amount of time that's passed, but also, honestly, no one from the Dermond family even attended Troy's trial.
No, I was going to say, if there was going to be any revenge, I would think it would be against a law enforcement officer or a prosecutor, not his parents.
Right. And they weren't really involved in the case.
Yeah.
But it has come up as a potential theory that's floating around out there. To me, the whole thing, the murders and then the disposal of the bodies, just feels sloppy and manic. I do not think this was a professional at all. You have one victim probably shot in the head, then beheaded and left at the scene. And then your second victim is beat to death and dumped in the lake after being crudely weighted down. That makes no sense. No sense. It feels very novice to me, and almost to me feels shock factor.
Yeah.
What can I get away with?
Yeah.
What do I want to do here kind of thing?
Yeah.
But as uncoordinated as the whole thing feels, we do know there was some planning involved because the killer or killers needed a boat.
Sure.
They would have had to have the cinder blocks, the paracord, the blue mesh bag, a gun,
Right.
a sharp instrument. And
Right.
this is a big instrument to dismember somebody.
Right.
And when we talk about the decapitation, as you mentioned earlier, decapitation in and of itself is very rare. Very rare.
Yeah.
And it normally points back to someone either having a mental health problem
Right.
or a real need to control, send a message kind of thing. Generally, in two victim homicides, it's rare that both victims are the target of the crime. Most of the time, there's one intended target and the other one just ends up being collateral damage. And in this case, it's believed Russell probably would have been the target. Mainly because, he was the one with the business dealings. I mean, she was a stay-at-home mom. But again, he's not a likely target.
No. I mean, he was a upstanding business guy who seemed to be really liked. So
some suggest perhaps the murders were the result of a robbery gone wrong.
Yeah, but they didn't take anything.
Okay. No, they didn't. But what if they had planned to? And then as soon as they got in there, things just went awry.
Well, you're going to take a whole person and not grab some jewelry?
Okay. All right. See, you're right.
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Because
you know what I'm saying? Then just kill her and get out of there.
Right.
But you're going to take her with you and take the time to cut off a head?
Right. It doesn't seem like a get in and get out kind of thing. Get in. Oh, I didn't realize anybody was home. Let me get out.
Exactly. Like, I'm going to off my eyewitnesses, but ultimately I'm going to get out of here. That's not what this person did. This person took the time to dismember a body and then to also take like a hostage. Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. And if it was a robbery gone wrong, like there were Rolexes and things like that laying around, you would at least grabbed
a few. Exactly. Right. On your way out, you would have grabbed one or two.
There's a theory that perhaps the killer or killers was someone who didn't understand guns and how they work. And maybe they thought that the gun could have easily been identified by the wound to Russell's head. And that's why they took his head.
Okay. Maybe that seems like a stretch.
It does. I think it was the prosecutor's podcast where Brett mentioned a theory. He said maybe there was a wayward grandson of one of the neighbors.
Okay.
And this grandson got into their grandfather's like antique gun collection or something like that and decided, oh, I'm going to go rob this house or whatever their motive was. And they get to the Dermond house, they shoot Russell, and then they think, oh no, they're going to be able to trace this bullet back to my grandfather. So let me take the head. I mean, it's all a stretch.
I don't know. You know what it's giving me? It's giving me a lot of like that helter skelter, like Charles Manson type chaos. Just wanting to create chaos. That's what I feel out of this.
That's the vibe I get too. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of, do you remember probably a decade ago now when people were eating bath salts and then like just
attacking people's faces?
Yeah, just like eating people's faces.
Yeah.
That's what this reminded me of.
Yeah, it sounds very disjointed. It doesn't follow any kind of pattern. You don't go from, oh, I'm just fooling around with firearms to like cutting off someone's head.
That is such a stretch.
I just can't buy that. I love the prosecutors, but I'm sorry. I can't get behind that.
That is a huge stretch. But what happens then? Nothing makes sense.
Yeah. I just think someone with some kind of mental illness, maybe someone who was schizophrenic. I don't know. Things happen. Mental illness it tells you to do crazy things sometimes. Yeah. And again, even if you are, say, one of their children or grandchildren seeking inheritance, which again seems unlikely, the brutality of the way they were killed, it's just over. I mean, literally overkill.
Well, okay. So it's interesting you say that because it is. And at the same time, the Deviant podcast brought in different FBI profilers and such to give their expert opinions. And one of them said, this is actually not overkill at all. It's actually the very least amount of violence necessary. They believe that 2 times in the head with a hammer-like weapon, but only twice.
Okay.
They believe Russell was shot in the head, but probably only once. All the real brutality, well, I mean, being hit in the head with a hammer is brutal, but
the removal of the head to me is pretty brutal.
But it wasn't, oh, for sure, but it wasn't
violent? Is that what they're saying?
The removal of the head was after the fact.
Right.
It wasn't, I'm cutting off your head to kill you.
Okay.
But I'm with you. It definitely says something. I don't think your average person could do that.
No. Let's hope not.
I can't even clean a turkey. Like, I cannot even pull the guts out of a turkey.
No, seriously, that's like a big, yeah, that seems to me pretty intense.
No, yeah. So obviously you're capable of something to be able to do that. That is like extreme.
Yeah.
To me, I also feel like this could be 2 killers. Do you think, what do you think of that?
Oh, I think it's 2.
2 killers. Do you think that could explain the 2 different deaths? Say one person killed and handled Russell while the other killed and handled Shirley. And that explains why their manners of death and the way they were treated afterwards was so different.
It's possible. I do think there was more than one killer. But again, what is the motivation? It's just so weird. One killer's like, I'm going to drag this poor sweet lady to my boat. And the other one's yelling like, okay, go ahead. I'm going to cut off this man's head first. I can't even imagine it.
And I will tell you, I have not buried the lead here. We never find a motive. Like, there is no good motive at all. We don't know the motive. We don't know the reason. Well, with no great leads, the case went cold. But obviously not for lack of effort. I'm telling you, Sheriff Sills is a man on a mission.
I like him.
I really like him. I really like him. He reached out to his roommate from his time at the FBI Academy, who was the sheriff in Jacksonville, Florida. And Jacksonville has over 4,500 deputies and a cold case squad. So a couple of years after the Dermond murders, Sheriff Sills asked to have 2 cold case detectives come up and review the case to see if there was anything that may have been missed. And I
Okay.
love that. I love that
Yeah.
because, so often we hear about people who, get jurisdictional and they don't want somebody else to come in and steal their case. I love this. Hey, come check our work. Tell me what we missed. Tell me what we can do better. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, just police transparency. We actually just got a message from a listener who is looking for justice for her sister, and she believes some of the roadblocks to finding out what happened to her sister is because there hasn't been this police transparency. So it really can accelerate a case or it can slow it down big time.
It can. It can. And I love it. Anytime I hear that someone says, "Hey, I don't care who gets the credit. Let's just solve this case." I
Yeah.
automatically respect that.
Yeah.
But the cold case detectives determined nothing had been missed. Any suggestion they had for the case had already been done. So Putnam County is already on it.
Yay, but also, ugh. Right?
It would have been nice if there was like, "Hey, try this," and then it panned out. In his interview with the Deviant podcast, Sheriff Sills said that about 4 or 5 years after the Dermond murder, they arrested a big time drug dealer. And this was someone he had wanted to get off the streets for a while. He was a real bad guy. And this real bad guy wanted to make a deal. So he asked Sheriff Sills if there was anything he could do to get some leniency. And the sheriff response was, "Yeah, I know a way." And he was inferring, "Hey, you know anything about this, double murder over here?"
Sure.
And the drug dealer said, no, he didn't know anything about the murders. So he's looking everywhere for answers to this case.
Yeah. Yeah. I could tell it's the one that keeps him up at night, this particular case.
It absolutely is. Now, when the scene was initially processed, the state crime lab, the GBI, said there was no DNA other than the Dermonds at the scene. But in 2022, Sheriff Sills heard about Othram Labs, which was an up-and-coming forensic laboratory, and Othram was starting to cause a stir in the field of criminal science. Sheriff Sills, get this, you're going to love this, he took every piece of physical evidence he had from the Dermond case, and he drove it personally to Othram Labs. He had his wife come with him and sit in the car with the evidence to protect the chain of custody. Went
Oh my
inside the
gosh.
building and talked to the lab.
That's incredible.
It is. Now, Othram did choose some items from the scene. I don't know specifically what these items were, but they did choose some. And they found DNA that did not belong to the Dermonds.
Okay.
We're getting somewhere, right?
Yes, something.
Now, unfortunately, it wasn't enough DNA to put into CODIS. So Sheriff Sills explained his understanding of the process, that if they had a suspect's DNA, then they could compare this DNA, the unknown DNA, to the suspects and see if they were consistent. And that would be a win, right?
Yeah.
However, they don't have enough to put in the system and just match to everybody in CODIS, which is what would be required in this case. But
Okay.
they're
But
working
if
on
they
it.
find someone, they can compare it, but they can't use that to just find someone.
You
Okay,
got it.
that was really wordy, but you understand what I'm saying, right? They have to
But
find the person first, and then they can try to match it with the DNA sample, but they can't use the DNA sample on its own in order to find the person.
you got it. You got it.
Okay.
The pool is just too big. But That may not always be the case. They are actively working on it, and the science keeps advancing. So that may change. Sheriff Sills is the squeaky wheel, and he's in contact with Othram and checks in every few months. Hey, what's new? Has anything changed? So I do expect there's a possibility we could hear more about this DNA in the future.
That's incredible.
That
would be amazing.
Amazing. Having DNA is a huge win, but we do have to keep it in perspective, because in Georgia, the only DNA that is put in CODIS is the DNA of someone who was convicted of a felony, and taking DNA from convicted felons has only been in effect for the last 20 years or so. So you could be a really bad guy. You could be a really bad guy in Georgia. You could be a really bad guy in Georgia who's been convicted of a felony and still not match all of the parameters to have your DNA in CODIS. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yep. Gotcha.
But it's a start, maybe one day. In 2014, a criminal profiler was brought in, but unfortunately, in this case, it wasn't very helpful. Now, that isn't always the case. Oftentimes, these profiles are helpful, but in this case, we already knew the things that the profile pointed to. So things like the killer knows how to drive a boat. The killer had access to the lake. The profile really just didn't narrow down the pool. Sheriff Sills was willing to do whatever it took. He sat down with psychics. He's done everything, but the case remains unsolved. Sheriff Sills still pleads with the public, saying, quote, "Do the right thing. And if you don't want to do it for the right thing, we got some money. We'll pay you for it, okay?"
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
It's incredible. He went on to say, "You don't like me? Call the FBI. You don't like the FBI? Call me. You don't like either one of us? Call your sheriff or the policeman down the street that's your cousin or your friend, okay? Let's do the right thing." End quote.
Wow. He's the guy you want working on your loved one's case for sure.
For sure. For sure. And Stephanie, here is where I leave you. This case remains unsolved, but I am hoping and praying that the remainder of the Dermond family and Sheriff Sills can get some answers. And I can tell you one thing, he's not giving up. He's not giving up. But isn't this case just, it's baffling. I mean, it's baffling. We've released nearly 100 episodes now, and out of 100, we've said before, most of them we have like at least some idea of what we think happened. Girl, I am stumped on this one. I'm stumped. I have no idea. I really, truly don't.
And it's just so senseless.
So senseless. You said it at the beginning of the episode, and it truly is just the most appropriate word. It's evil. It's evil. An 88-year-old and an 87-year-old.
And for what? You didn't steal anything. You didn't need anything.
They have no enemies. They're just living their life. They're good people. They're involved in their church. They have children, grandchildren. I don't know. I don't know. There's really no words. There's no words. This is an awful, awful, horrendous case.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Cynthia.
So now it's going to be up to you, Stephanie, to bring us up by telling us about the Branch of Hope.
Well, our Branch of Hope for April 2025 is Futures Without Violence. And this nonprofit was presented in last week's case, where we covered the very strange case of Mary Day. Have you still been thinking about that one?
Girl, I have not stopped thinking about that.
Was she? Wasn't she? Where was she that whole time? What's going on? I don't want to give any spoilers in case anyone hasn't listened to it yet, but you have to go listen to it. But this is not a spoiler. The victim that we've been speaking of, her name, Mary Day, as I said, and unfortunately, most of her childhood was spent in a home with domestic violence. So we thought we would find a wonderful organization whose mission is to stop domestic violence. And Futures was just that organization. For almost 40 years, Futures has worked to build thriving families and communities free from violence and filled with hope and opportunity. They attack this from several different angles. First, they provide earning opportunities. They also give talks about sexual violence, about gun violence, and they have special men and boys programs which teach them how to deal with emotions, how to handle conflict, how to reach out to community services if they need some. And to that point, they have mentored over 1 million young people.
That's amazing.
What a testament. Exactly. So if you are part of our Patreon, know that a portion of your monthly subscription is going to go to Futures Without Violence, which should make you feel so great. You are helping Cynthia and I as creators, and then you're helping these nonprofit organizations every month. And this month, we are tackling domestic violence. If you want more information about our Branch of Hope, or more information about Futures Without Violence, you can head to our Instagram page at The Dark Oak Podcast, our website, thedarkoak.com, or you could email us, and we're happy to pass along any details and any contacts that you may need. If your family is in need of counseling or in need of support, please reach out to Futures Without Violence. Violence is not the only way. You can be the one that stops the cycle.
I love it. And I'm so happy to support that beautiful organization for April 2025.
Yep. And April, the month of celebrations, Cynthia. Don't forget to go and follow the steps to sign up for our giveaway. And again, join the celebration. Make sure you are here every Wednesday and Friday in April and May. We love you, Shiver Seekers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This episode of The Dark Oak was created, researched, written, recorded, hosted, edited, published, and marketed by Cynthia and Stephanie of Just Us Gals Productions, and made possible by you, our shiver-seeking listener. Special thanks goes to Justice Himes for our incredible artwork and Ryan Creep for our amazing music.